What a blessing that was. What a blessing the morning's been. It's just such a joy and honor to be here with you again this great morning. And we're talking about the hope of God through Jesus. And so I'm just going to reiterate the last verse of the text that was read. Let your steadfast love, O God, be upon us, even as we hope in you. So, I lived through one of the most frightening experiences in my life on January 6th. If that day sounds familiar, well, the frightening experience I had, it wasn't the Washington, D.C. insurrection. I was frying fish at home, and I used lard, and a piece of the lard slipped onto the burner and splashed onto the nearby wall. And the exhaust above the stove kept sucking the flames up, although I didn't realize it at the time. I fought the flames at first, but they were just getting worse. And I finally called the fire department, and they extinguished the flames in my kitchen. And I'm telling you, if you've ever been in a fire, you will know that it happens quickly, and it spreads so fast and so swiftly, it's unbelievable. It's in the blink of an eye. My fire, my kitchen fire, my grease fire, it was terrifying. And I'll just give you a little background about me. I live in a church manse in Windsor, Ontario, with my 17-year-old daughter, who was thankfully not at home when the fire occurred. But once I was secure outside, after the fire, while the fire was happening and the firemen were in, I called one of our church elders. And his only passion in life was the welfare of our church. And so I called him, and he scurried quickly. He didn't live that far. And he scurried over with his wife. And I am telling you, I was so happy and relieved to see a couple of familiar faces among the faces of the curious neighbors who had made their way out to see what was going on. And CTV News was there, and all the firemen were there. And so it was good to see some familiar faces. And I rushed to this couple whom I had served for 6 years as a minister. And I rushed to them, I ran to them, and I started to cry, you know. And I said, I don't know what happened. I was just frying fish. I was looking to them, you know, hoping for a hug, words of comfort, or possibly inquiry of my daughter. They didn't know she wasn't there. But their response moves me to sadness to this day. The wife, she looked at me, and there I was with socked feet. I didn't have any shoes on, shaken and traumatized, and I had soot and baked plastic pasted all over me from fighting the flames. And her only words to me were, "This is going to be over $20,000 in damages, you know." Those words resonated through my mind as I was sitting in my hotel room that night alone. And they resonated through my mind the 6 weeks that I sat in that hotel room while they were making the house suitable for me to return. And during that time, thankfully, for stability, my daughter stayed here in London with her dad. So I was alone for 6 weeks in this hotel room after a fire. And I remember feeling such a profound sense of loneliness. I have no family in Windsor, just the congregations I serve and acquaintances I had met along the way. You see, I moved to Windsor to marry the love of my life, who was from Detroit, and he left me 3 years ago. So this fire was fresh off of the heels of that. I felt utterly alone. Many of us go through stuff that strip us of our sense of accompaniment. We feel like we're all alone facing our problems. And although sometimes we know that we do have allies, we have friends and we have people who care about us, sometimes we wonder if they could possibly understand what we're going through. Isn't that so? I know sometimes they're sympathetic, but do they really get what I'm going through? And oftentimes I wonder if that is how we sometimes feel about God. Does God really know what I'm going through? Does God know my pain and my loneliness? And is God going to do anything about it? It wasn't long before I realized that as much as I felt alone, I really wasn't. You see, God has a way of turning chaos into triumph, of turning pain into a mechanism of strength and resilience. God has a way of turning loneliness into opportunities to be introspective. And you know, it was those moments all alone in a hotel room, wondering when I could return to my home and a life with my child, that led me to finding myself in many ways. It was those moments that enabled me to figure out where my home really was, that my home really wasn't in Windsor at all. It was the voice of that woman placing a building ahead of my human life that reminded me of what family really is. I'm here to tell you today that God sees our struggles and our pain, our loneliness and despair, and God fashions them into opportunities for us to be renewed and for us to flourish and for us to heal. It's like the story of Hagar. Hagar was a single mother. She was abandoned by the family she belonged to. And there in the wilderness, all alone with her son, with very little provision, she was wondering, like we are, and she was questioning, does anybody care? She's crying in the desert. She's lost in her despair. She thinks nobody loves her. Hagar thinks nobody's there. But God says, I will be a ring of fire around her, and I will be the glory in her midst, and the power of my presence will raise her from her knees. Yes, I will lift her up again for I'm the God who sees. I'm the God who sees. Then God speaks in gentle whispers and softly calls her name. She feels love's arms enfold her as God holds her, and she'll never be the same. 'Cause I'm the God who always cares, and my promises are true. And when this world deserts you, this is what I'll do. And then there's this other woman named Ruth. Ruth was from the land of Moab, and she was met in grief and heartache. She was a widow, and she lived with her mother-in-law, who was also a widow. And now it was time to move on. But Ruth had never been to Bethlehem. She had never tasted of the house of bread. But now she had heard an inner invitation to come and taste and see. And so she vowed herself to her mother-in-law, and she said, "Where you go, I will go. Where you lie, I will lie. Where you die, I will die." And she begins her journey to the promised land. She's traveling through the desert, and she's leaving her despair. She is hoping for a future, praying God will lead her there. And God says, "I will put a ring around your finger, and I will bless a child within your womb, and the Savior will be born through you to free the world from sin. And he'll make all things new for you and love you back to life again, again." And then Ruth gave birth to a son, Obed, who gave birth to a son, Jesse, who gave birth to a son, David. Now the same once shepherd boy, mighty warrior, anointed king, is alone, terrified in the darkness. He's hiding in the desert. He's battling despair. David thinks his life is over, it's over. And God, he doesn't care. But God says, "I will be the rock of your salvation. I'll hold you up by the strength of my right hand, and the power of my spirit will free you from all fear in the hour of your deepest needs, you'll find that I'm here. I am here. I will be a ring of fire around you, and I will be the glory in your midst, and the power of my presence will rise you from your knees, and I will lift you up again, for I'm the God who sees. And then from the line of David, finally, Jesus the Messiah, the anointed one, Yeshua the Christ, born in the same house of bread to be the bread of life, in the town of Bethlehem, and he would grow and he would be called the Son of God. He would be called Emmanuel, God with us. And he would heal and he would reveal. And then he had an encounter with a woman named Mary of Magdalene, who was plagued by demons and tormented by evil spirits. And you know, Jesus set her free. And so Mary followed him, and she listened at his feet, and she served him, and she loved him. Oh, how she loved him. But then she watched as they nailed his body to the cross. And as they placed him in a tomb, in that moment, her hope died. It died. She's crying in the garden. She's broken in despair. She's searching for her Savior, but his body isn't there. Then he said, Mary. I will be a ring of fire around you, and I will be the glory in your midst, and the power of my presence will rise you from your knees, and I will lift you up again, for I'm the God who sees. I'm the God who sees. I'm the God who sees you. I'm the God who sees you in your wilderness, sees you in your brokenness, when you're feeling so lonely. I'm the God who sees in the desert places of your life, in the empty spaces and your strife. I'm the God who sees. I'm nearer than you dare believe, here in the very air